You're listening to the continuation of Cross-Section of a Human Heart, a memoir of early adulthood, by Abi Wurdeman, read for you by the author. Each story in this book can stand alone, but if you prefer to listen to them in order, you can find links to previous chapters in the description below. Six. That time I got a blue ribbon even though I'm slow. The very first ambition I ever had was to have Angie as my sister, always and for all time. My second ambition was to be President of the United States of America, like George Washington, my childhood hero. My third was to be a school principal, like my dad. My fourth was to marry my preschool classmate Jimmy, who was unfortunately not into it. But the first and most certain thing I knew about my future was that Angie would always be at the center of it. She always had been. Even my mother is unable to recall the origin story of Angie's and my friendship. In my memories, the girl is like my heart-patterned bedspread or the warming smell of blue box macaroni and cheese. She had always been there, a given reality of the particular life I got to live. She was, as far as I was concerned, a sister who just lived in a different house. And perhaps because we thought of each other like family, we committed to each other like family. Which is to say, we actively chose to be inextricably linked, come what may, for the remainder of our lives. Angie and I planned our joint future at age 6, literally drawing it up on a sheet of paper we'd brought out to recess. While our classmates played foursquare, we sat on the sidewalk, sketching out our dreams. We were going to go to the same college. It didn't matter which one. The point was that we'd be getting a good education somewhere together. After that, we'd probably get jobs in the same field. We'd marry brothers, be one another's maids of honor, and live in a duplex, enabling us to establish independent personal lives while remaining as close to one another as humanly possible. Abigail was to be the middle name of her firstborn daughter. Mine would be called Tiffany Angela, later changed to Teresa Angela, later changed to Quest Angela when I went through that early teen phase where I thought picking a random word and making it a name made me deep. Because we were morbid children, our plan ended in death, with the requirement that we coordinate our final life-ending illnesses, ideally we'd die the same way, so we could go to our shared resting place in connecting caskets. I don't know where we planned to have our husbands buried, I guess off to the side a little. It didn't seem relevant at the time. Every goal was born of the same philosophy. Wherever we went, whatever we did, whoever we became, we had to do it together. So it was an ice-cold shock to me when Angie won a race in our second grade gym class. I always knew I was slow and weak. I always knew it because I was known for it. A kid once called me out for being too slow at square dancing. That's how bad it got. Perhaps because Angie and I had so aggressively thought of ourselves as the same, or perhaps because I was a tiny narcissist, I assumed she shared my athletic incompetence. Then one day I watched her run that race in gym, this little freckled gazelle swiftly leaving everybody else in a friendly cloud of dust. I watched her win. I watched our classmates light up with new knowledge of her capabilities. I knew my job was to feel only good things like pride and admiration, but deep within my baby soul, panic set in. She now belonged to a world that had no place for me, the world of strong calves and glistening trophies and people who knew all the rules to basketball. I could lose her, I thought, for literally the first time ever in my life. Soon, she was recognized as one of the best athletes in our class. Every spring, we'd have field day, in which we competed against other schools in track and field for the purpose of reassuring the clumsiest kids in St. Louis County that they were still swifter on their feet than me. That was how I saw it, anyway. It was my most hated day of the year, and I dreaded piling into the cars of volunteer parents at the end of the day, empty-handed as I sat among classmates clutching multicolored fistfuls of ribbon. I think it was third grade when Angie handed me one of her 5 blue ribbons as we buckled our seatbelts. I couldn't choose how to feel about the gesture. On one hand, blue ribbons were like blue diamonds to me. They were precious and rare, and I didn't dare dream of owning one someday. It didn't matter that Angie already had several, it still felt like she was offering me something priceless and irreplaceable. It was a generosity I wasn't sure I'd be capable of myself. On the other hand, I hated pity awards. I didn't earn it, I told her. I didn't win. I don't want a ribbon I didn't win. You did win, though, she said. Best friend ever. Anyone else could have said this, and it would have made me angrier. It would have felt patronizing. It was different coming from Angie, because I genuinely believed she was someone who thought such an award should exist. And if such an award did exist, I knew that rightly or wrongly, she would have given it to me. This is still how Angie navigates the world, with her eyes and heart open, noting the best in others and making sure their contributions aren't buried beneath their shortcomings. And every time I'd start to panic that she was moving into a space where I didn't belong, I'd see her turn around, take my hand, and pull me along with her. As we got older, we did find ourselves branching out to new, sometimes separate circles and exploring different worlds on our own. In high school, she maintained her place at the center of my social world, but now when we gabbed over late-night cookie dough on weekends, we'd have to supplement our stories with background information to make up for the parts of our lives that were foreign to the other. We did not follow through on our childhood plan to go to the same college because, once again, we turned out to be two different people with different sets of goals. We each settled into communities and routines that were entirely unseen by the other, the characters inhabiting our worlds appearing like translucent phantoms in one another's imaginations. I discovered my many, many weaknesses as a long-distance friend, all of which boiled down to a terrible habit of assuming my love was a given, even if I was bad about responding to emails and returning phone calls. We long-distance laughed, long-distance fought, long-distance cried, and all the while I felt a growing discomfort over the way her entire reality was now only a theoretical fog in my mind. Her friends and professors and classes and apartment and job all floated through my imagination as indistinct faces and generic landscapes, like a picture drawn by a middle schooler who was kind of okay at art. That worried child's voice returned. I could lose her. The grown-ass me would have told my college self that some of that fog could be cleared by visiting more, calling more, asking for pictures, finding the right balance between nurturing old relationships and building new ones, looking at this new phase of friendship as an opportunity for active choices, rather than presumed crises. The grown-ass me would also explain that this is how lifetime relationships work. Sometimes you stumble through the fog for a while. Sometimes it's your fault and sometimes it's nature. But the love of family is inexorable. And Angie and I had decided years ago that we were sisters first and BFFs second. A year after college, Angie got married. True to character, Angie's wedding was genuine and modest, an acknowledgement of love as an expression, not love as an event. It would be close friends and family only. There was no official bridal party, and it was held in her church, a new church that met in a former gun and ammo shop. The event was planned with an abbreviated guest list and no lengthy reception. Consistent with her traditional pragmatism and her gift for getting to the heart of the matter, my oldest friend was shirking the burden of an extravagant party. She and Ray were there to get married. It was that simple and that lovely. When I'd asked Angie what I could do to help, she told me there wasn't much, but she'd love it if I could come about half an hour early. I pulled into the parking lot of her church, wondering what my role was here. I knew what the role was once supposed to be, per the plan we mapped out at recess in first grade. I was supposed to be her maid of honor. But I was also supposed to be someone who had never left her side, someone who knew her fiancé almost as well as she did, someone who would never have allowed for a single moment of ambiguity or ignorance in our friendship. I felt shy slipping into the nursery of her tiny church, where she was changing into her wedding dress, or more accurately, her wedding blouse and skirt. "It isn't very fancy," she said, "but I can wear it again." I know it's cliche to say this, but she looked like an honest-to-God angel, an actual angel. The way the thin white fabric framed her figure, her long strawberry blonde hair slipping over her shoulders, the soft glow of an undoubting bride. I told her she was beautiful. Then she asked me to be her maid of honor. The question was presented with a knowing smirk, a query brides on television asked weepily over rosé posed now, 20 minutes before the wedding, with a casual blend of sincerity and humor. In this moment, I finally dropped my insecurity long enough to recognize the steps I'd taken in the last 10 minutes. Her mother greeting me at the door and ushering me into this room. This brief moment alone, just the two of us. After all this time, after all the fog, I had still, by some magic, snagged the honor of a sister. It was like holding that first-place ribbon in my hands again. Even after failures, even after proving myself a foreigner in her world, she chose me. She handed me a small ring box. "Just hang out and then bring me this when it's time for the rings." "How do I know when that is?" I can't remember. Just when it gets awkward and quiet and I'm looking around like I don't know what comes next, that's probably the time. Bring it up then." That turned out to be a fairly accurate cue, and I performed my simple role as MOH. She and Ray said their vows, exchanged rings, and lit the unity candle. The wedding was followed by a brief round of photos, a little cake, and then all 30 or so guests formed two lines, creating a hallway of people leading to the door. Angie and Ray ran through it as we blew bubbles. Then Angie stopped abruptly in the doorway. "Wait, I forgot my purse." She darted back through the path of bubbles, retrieved her purse, and returned to Ray's side. I joined the rest of the guests on the curb, waving as the newlyweds drove away. One of the great challenges of young adulthood is watching your close friends pair up before you. Whether they fall in love while you're still single, or move in with a significant other, or marry themselves off, there is that tiny rumbling of fear. What does this change? Could I lose her? That fear no longer existed for me as I watched Angie forge this new commitment. That question had already been asked and answered plenty of times before. I mean, yes, I could totally lose her if I turned into an abusive friend. But things like distance and evolving lives and new priorities were not enough to cancel the bond we'd spent our lives cementing. I last saw Angie during a whirlwind trip to see my brother's family in St. Louis. On this trip, I had time to do almost nothing. But I hadn't seen Angie face to face in years, and neither one of us wanted to lose this opportunity to get together. We found a 2-hour window that worked for both of us, and Angie came up with a Starbucks located at the midpoint between her house and my brother's. She was tired, I was sick, but for 2 magnificent hours we both felt like we'd come home. All the stories came out in an unstoppable stream, all the parts of our lives that were breaking our hearts and giving us hope and making us laugh and filling us with love and making us feel old. We heard each other and encouraged each other and reminded each other of our strengths. Later, when my holiday travels brought me back to my parents' house, I told my mother how incredible it is that after all these years, Angie is still so much a part of me. There was a sudden spark of remembrance in my mom's eyes. "Oh," she said, "I wanted to show you something." She brought me into her home office and pointed at her pen holder. There in front were 2 pairs of child safety scissors, the kind we used to get when buying school supplies. One pair had my name written on the hot pink handle in my mother's handwriting. The other handles were fluorescent green and read, A.T. I picked them up. "Why do you have Angie's old safety scissors?" I have no idea. I discovered them a couple months ago. I thought about sending them to her, but I didn't want to. I guess it's selfish. I just like being able to come in here and see both pairs together. I liked it too. It reminded me of all the years we spent side by side in school, cooking up all these fantastical ideas of what our lives would be like. How maybe one day our hair would turn a pretty brown like my grandma's had, or all the boyfriends we'd have in high school, all the books we'd write and patients we would cure and nations we would lead. And, of course, the most important ambition of all, that we would be sisters, always and for all time. Tell your friend how you feel. A template. One of the challenges of your 20s is trying to keep long-distance friendships alive. If you are currently feeling abandoned by a friend who hasn't checked in 2 months, or if you find yourself constantly failing to communicate your appreciation of another person across the miles, I can promise you this. It does get easier. A successful long-distance friendship depends on understanding 2 things: how another person expresses friendship and how they recognize friendship. When you know these things, you can truly see the love your friend is offering you, and you can give them your best in return. All anyone needs is to know they are supported and loved. Here is one of my favorite techniques for leaving love behind, long after I leave. Sit down at your computer and type around 20 short, meaningful thoughts you would like to tell your friend. They can be compliments, special memories, quotes you think they'd love to hear on a bad day, whatever. Print that shit out. Grab some scissors and cut each thought out individually. You should wind up with several little strips of paper. The next time you're at your friend's house, apartment, dorm room, or abandoned boxcar, try to finagle some time to be in the space when they are either absent or asleep. Hide those little meaningful thoughts all over their living space. Now, there are a few guidelines for hiding places. Be mindful of your friends' boundaries. If you know them well enough to want to do this for them, you know if they hate having people in their bedroom or cabinets when they're not around, in which case stick to hiding spots that are as non-intimate as possible. Under a box of Kleenex, wrapped around a doorknob, that kind of thing. Be mindful of obvious boundaries. If you find yourself tucking a slip of paper into a diary or rolling it up and popping it into a prescription pill bottle, you may have crossed a line. Make sure every spot is a place they're bound to find it eventually, even if they're not hunting for it. If you need to use tape, be 100% sure the tape will completely remove from the surface it's taped to without destroying it. Then let your friend know what you've done so they don't think a stalker broke into their home and left messages behind. They can try to find all the messages if they want, but the idea is that they will inevitably find every message sooner or later just by living their life. A month later, they go to change the paper towels and bam, little words of love coiled around the paper towel holder. Out of frickin' nowhere. At 8 a.m. on a Thursday. Now, I know this seems like a big production, so here are some suggestions to make this whole thing easier. Ideas for hiding places. The toilet paper holder. Wrapped around the blade of a knife shoved back into the knife block. Taped to the underside of a lid. Make sure it flops a bit so it won't be missed. Tucked into the pages of a book, not a diary or a book you think they wouldn't want you to know they were reading. Under seasonal or holiday decor that you know they'll be moving sometime in the next 6 months. Tucked between spice jars. Wrapped around a remote control. Taped over a light switch. In a coupon envelope. Ideas for personal messages. I've always admired the way you blank. The funny little thing I miss the most about you is blank. I want to acknowledge how much courage/wisdom/kindness it must have taken when you blank. Remember when blank? Inside joke reference. Compliment you overheard someone else say. I know you can handle blank because blank. I am a better person because I know you. The last step is to have 0 expectations when it comes to your friend's reaction to this gesture. People don't all express or register love the same way. There are a lot of things we have to take on faith. If a person is still in your life, it probably means they want to be. So anytime you give love, however you do it, you need to remember that you're giving a gift. The rule of gift giving is that once you give something away, the other person has full rights to decide how they're going to use it. So love and trust. Hi, I'm Abi Wurdeman, author of Cross Section of a Human Heart, and the voice you've been listening to for the last little bit here. I am releasing a story from the book in audio on YouTube every Sunday, and always followed with a little bit of author commentary, follow-up story, that kind of thing. So if you want to catch the next one, subscribe below. And in the meantime, I want to tell you a little bit more about Angie. This, just like last week's story, was really fun for me to record because it gave me a chance to look at just how much the relationship had evolved since I wrote about it, and how it's really only gotten better. Angie and I have gotten closer. We see a lot more of each other now. She lives like 30 minutes from my mom, so when I visit my mom, I also get to visit Angie. It's continued to be a really special and very important relationship in my life. I wanted to tell you specifically about my wedding and Angie's role in that, since we just talked about the reverse in the story. So I got married just 2.5 years ago. So recently enough that I'm still counting the half. Similar to Angie's wedding, we didn't do a bridal party. We asked close friends and family to play certain roles so that both because we needed the help and also to make sure that we were honoring those relationships. And I continue to be so grateful to everyone who participated. It is a really special thing to have your friends and family show up and play some sort of a role as sort of a way of, I think being actively part of bringing you into this next phase of your life and celebrating the relationship that you found, the marriage that you're building. And now to have those people in our memories, the fact that, just about any moment of our wedding that I can look back and remember, there's someone special to us who made it better or who made it possible. They're now all our pictures. It's really special. That said, despite the fact that we did not have a bridal party, I still asked Angie to be my honorary maid of honor. And she's listed in the program as sister of the bride. It's in quotes so people don't get confused, but that's the title that she deserves. So when I asked Angie to be my maid of honor, at this point, 1, it's a long distance friendship, and then 2, we're 38. It's a lot more. We don't have all of the events leading up to the wedding. People are busy. My friends have kids. Everybody's spread out. So we're not doing the bridal showers, the girls' weekends, the engagement parties. All that stuff isn't happening. We're just getting married. So when I asked her to be my maid of honor, I was like, it's mostly honorary. I just have 2 jobs that I want to ask you to do. One is to make a toast, and the other one is to be the keeper of the moose, which is not a traditional wedding role, but it was a very important one in my wedding. And here's the moose in question. It's Bullwinkle. If you know who Bullwinkle is, you probably figured that one out. So when I was 12, my dad took me on a trip to Alaska, and it was a really fun trip, just the 2 of us. It was like a work trip, but we were able to do some fun touristy, outdoorsy things while we were there. And every night, we would find ice cream somewhere. My dad loved ice cream. We would get ice cream, and then we would go back to the hotel room and we would watch Rocky and Bullwinkle on Cartoon Network. And my dad loved that show, and that was his introducing me to the show. We didn't have cable at home, so it was fun. And it was just a really special memory. My dad had a Bullwinkle impression that I'm pretty sure he was really proud of. It was all right. But when I was around 14 or 15 and trying to buy Christmas presents with my allowance money, which wasn't very much, I found this Bullwinkle in like a TJ Maxx or something for really cheap. So this was my Christmas gift to my dad back when I was a teenager. And he brought it with him to every job he had. Every time he, switched jobs, had a new office, Bullwinkle would go in there with him.
And then when he retired, he kept it in his garage, which he referred to as his man cave, with all of his tin wall decor, his signs talking about fishing and hunting and stuff. So when my dad died, I took Bullwinkle back. And it's just sort of this, he's the guy I have around to remind me of my dad. When I start to miss my dad, I keep him close. I sit him on my desk with me or something like that, just so that I can remember that, you know, certain parts of my dad will always be with me. So when I got married, I wanted to put Bullwinkle in the front row. Not as a stand-in for my dad, but as a reminder and a symbol of our relationship. But I needed someone to look after the moose. And I knew that that was a job that Angie would be great at and completely down for. So when I asked her if she would do this, and I explained what the situation was, the only thing she asked was, "What is the moose wearing?" I was like, "To the wedding? He's got a Wasamata U sweatshirt. It's just like sewn onto him. It's part of him. But that's pretty much it." And she goes, "Okay." 2 weeks later, I get a brown envelope in the mail, and the return address is Moose Warehouse, spelled W-E-A-R, like Men's Warehouse. And inside, there's like 4 to 5 different blue bow ties for me to choose from, moose-sized bow ties for me to choose from. So I'm on the phone, like texting my mom, sending her these pictures, being like, "Hey, which bow tie do you think is the most dad?" And we ended up picking this one right here. It's very classy, simple, blue satin. I think this would very much be his style. Now he wears it. He wore it to the wedding. Now he wears it every day because it just makes him feel good. You know, makes him feel put together. Walks through the day with a little more confidence. You know, so. Anyway, so that was like a special, awesome thing, and really sums up who Angie is. She immediately anticipates needs. She also anticipates the needs most people don't think of, which are things that are more supportive. She's so instantly supportive. She's like the queen of yes and. "Oh, this is important to you? Cool. Let's dig deeper on it. Let's have more of that." So that's pretty much exactly Angie. And I think the other thing I love about this story, especially as a follow-up to the one I just told you, is that it just kind of affirms what I was talking about, which is you get to have these amazing phases of your relationships a lot of times when you can learn to be okay with the waves that come with it, with the evolutions that are going to come, with the fact that sometimes it's going to be a little tricky, because we change, and because sometimes we change in the same way. Angie and I are at a phase where we've landed in very similar spots in terms of who we are as people. And that hasn't always been true. And it might happen in the future that we're not quite the same again. But we got here because we wanted to stick it out. We wanted to see if we could understand where the other person was. There was one thing that came up at my wedding that was a little bit of a hiccup. I'm not going to get into it, but because of it, I needed to ask Angie if she would be up for something that, might be a little bit awkward. And her response was, "Oh, I'm totally here for it. I'm here for all the awkward." And that sums it up. That sums up the thing that I am so grateful for in our friendship and in her. The fact that with the people she loves, she's always there for all the awkward. With herself, developing as a person, building her own life, she's here for all the awkward. And I think that when we can be that person, when we can be up for that vulnerability, when we can be okay with the fact that things aren't always going to feel smooth, we're not always going to feel at our coolest or our best, but we're showing up and we're trying. When we can be that person, my God, we can build incredible things. Whether it's a relationship, a career, a home, whatever it is, a community, whatever it is we're trying to build, if we can be there for the awkward, that's a win. So anyway, that's this week's story. Thank you so much for joining me again. And I'll hopefully see you here next week for that time I finally committed to a cable plan. It's about writing. In the meantime, please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you later.